Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokis, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hi, y'all, and welcome to this week's episode of No Wrong Notes. This week's episode is an interview that I did with Breanne Rourke of the Honest Voice Co. And over the course of this conversation, we discuss Breanne's unique path as a singer, performer, and teacher, as well as her hot takes on belting, mixing, and how she works with her own students to find their unique sound. I just know you'll get some ideas for your own singing through this conversation. I had so much fun chatting with Breanne, and I know that you'll enjoy this episode. Before we dive into the meat of this interview, a little bit about Breanne. Breanne Rourke is a professional voice teacher and performer based in Niagara, Ontario. Got a Canadian in the house. With over 15 years of teaching experience and a Bachelor of Music in Voice Performance from Western University, she's helped hundreds of singers find freedom, confidence, and power in their voices, especially when it comes to unlocking that not-so-elusive mix belt. An RCM certified teacher and proud member of NATS, let's go NATS, and the Speak Easy Cooperative, Breanne also holds an evidence-based voice training certification, which has shaped her modern, science-informed approach to commercial and pop singing. Beyond teaching singers, she's passionate about mentoring the next generation of voice teachers, helping them build thriving, ethical, and joyful teaching practices. When she's not in the studio or performing, you'll find her directing a worship band, chasing her two kids, or unwinding with a good psychological thriller and lifting weights. Ideally, not at the same time. Thanks, Breanne. All right, let's get into this week's interview with Breanne Rourke. All right, welcome, Breanne Rourke of the Honest Voice Co. Thank you for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast and chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped to be here.
Yay! So let's dive right in. If you can tell the listeners who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are in your career as a singer and voice teacher.
Absolutely. So my name is Breanne, and I have been a singer essentially all my life. I started taking voice lessons when I was 5 years old, piano shortly thereafter, and my parents really, helped hone my gift. My dad especially was very supportive of anything musical I wanted to do. He ended up actually becoming my manager, so to speak. As I got older into my teens, I developed a love for songwriting and really worked to develop that skill. And, my dad saw something in me and we recorded demos. I was gigging all the time in probably really sketchy bars, because this was back when you were allowed to smoke in bars, and there would be old men hitting on me at 14. It was a wild time, but I loved what I did. I wrote my own stuff. I did a lot of covers. So I guess you could say my influences were Sarah McLachlan, Chantal Kreviazek, Vanessa Carlton, Michelle Branch, kind of these singer-songwriters who also played an instrument, because I also played piano to self-accompany. And I decided to go into my Bachelor of Music at Western University in London, Ontario, right after I graduated high school, because I wanted to improve my voice. And I was also studying with a voice teacher. I had been for the last 10 years, and I was working classically. And the idea of going for a B-Muse at the time, I really wanted to just improve my voice. And so, even though I didn't necessarily want to pursue a career in the classical field, I enjoyed it. Like, I actually really loved singing art song. I kind of found an affinity for like French art song. Um, I loved singing Mozart arias, but the the prospect of getting into like the world of yaps and living out of a suitcase just didn't like appeal to me. I really wanted to become a singer-songwriter, and so my last year of university, I my dad and I put together a press kit. We toured Nashville, New York, Toronto, um, and I ended up getting one of my songs hit up a radio producer, and so they we were cleaning up the track essentially to get it promoted to Canadian radio. And a week after all of that transpired was also my final recital at my B Muse. My father tragically passed away, and that sent me into like a huge depression, of course. I had a reckoning with what I wanted to do with my life, how I wanted music to look. And I also just felt like I needed a break from music at that point because my dad was so closely like tied to it. So I worked at Starbucks for a year. It was great, would recommend. And then I started teaching, and my first lesson was so funny. She booked like a half hour with me, and I think I kept her for like 2 hours. I wasn't looking at the clock because I was just so excited, and I was like, here's everything I know in one lesson for you. You're welcome. But it really lit a spark in me. And so as I was teaching independently, I felt like the profession was quite isolating. So in 2021, I had the idea that kind of spawned from inspiration from my a business consultant that I work with, Michelle Marquardt Deveau of the Speakeasy. Shout out Michelle, who had posted in our group about kind of like the lack of help and mentorship that young teachers would get. So I felt like in the forums, a young teacher would come asking for advice and people would just kind of like poo poo it. And I was like, well, I feel like, what if I understand that they get underestimated, but I didn't like that cycle of like, well, you're just a new teacher, you need to get experience. I wanted to be somebody that like helped bridge the gap, right? To bridge the gap between newly starting out teaching and really coming into yourself as a teacher. So I wanted to mentor, to really listen, and to help those emerging teachers find their voice, both in the studio, like, and in their profession. So I had one student who had been with me for so long named Maddie. And I knew she was going to university to become a music teacher, like in the school system. And she had expressed interest to me in teaching. And I thought, listen, what if you teach under me and I mentor you? Like, it's not just like okay, see you later, you're off on your own, I'm going to give you students and you're just going to be on your own. Like, what if it's a continuous mentorship kind of relationship? And that's essentially how the Honest Voice Co. was born. I now have 3 teachers who teach underneath me as my associates, and it's not like okay, you guys go off and teach and we never have a conversation. Like, there's constant mentorship, so that they get to become the teachers that they want to be.
That is so cool. And I think that that is a really interesting way to look at like hiring on other teachers to work with you, because that is actually something that I've been low-key thinking about in terms of
Hmm.
my own studio. And I feel like that is such a cool way to think about it in terms of like you're not just hiring someone to help you and work for you, but it's working together, because you're right. Teaching voice can be very isolating. I work by myself. I like work with students all day long, but it's like that can feel, yeah, very isolating, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So wow, that is really cool. And that is definitely giving me something to chew on for sure. Speaking of your studio, one of your studio's core messages emphasizes knowing your authentic self and authentic voice. How do you help students differentiate between technical good singing, which I'm sure, going to school for classical singing, I feel like there's a lot of emphasis. Like, I mean, even in my own education, studying classical music, there's really this emphasis on technical quality. So, how do you differentiate between technical good singing and singing that feels true to them, to your students? And can you share a transformation story where a student, discovered their own voice?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. One of the things that I see super often in singers, especially the younger ones, is the pressure or maybe desire to sound or sing a certain way, right? They're constantly measuring themselves against other singers, and especially now that like social media is so huge with like TikTok and Instagram, so certain trends or what they think a good quote unquote voice should sound like. So in classical singing, like I felt like I was trying to mold myself into something, right? Because voices tend to be categorized or like classified. So throughout my university days, I was always considered a light lyric soprano. As I came out of undergrad, I'm still undergrad. I'm only 22. Like my voice has so much more to grow. I ended up becoming more of like a full lyric soprano, which was really fun. But I was told so many times throughout my career that I would never be able to pursue a career in classical anyway because my voice, my speaking voice, is too raspy, too husky, blah, blah, blah. Now, here's the thing. I, in 2014, was diagnosed with muscle tension dysphonia, which changed the game forever because oh my goodness, so many folks were like, oh, you have nodules, you have cancer, you have a polyp, like there's something wrong with you pathologically in the voice. No, my muscles, when I went to go see my laryngologist for the first time, he was like, oh, your cricothyroid muscle, which is the muscle that, tends to control head voice, it's just lazy. It doesn't really want to connect very well. And I was like, oh, that's been it this whole time? Like, crazy, crazy. So stepping into the pop world, that sound is kind of desirable, right? I remember people thinking like, oh, your voice, sometimes when you sing, it gives off like a pink kind of vibe, right? Like with the huskiness. And I'm like, I know, but I'm not controlling that. But that's the cool thing about pop music is that there is no such thing as like, this is the one sound that we're all trying to achieve, right? So I would say a big part of my job now as a teacher is to help students unlearn what good singing, again, good in quotations, is. So I talk a lot about how like good singing is only half of the picture. The other half is honest singing. So technical skills are super important, and I'm definitely to my core a technical girly. I love working on vocal technique with students, but authenticity is the thing that gives your singing purpose. So we do a lot of reflection. So things like, okay, how does that feeling in your body and what emotions, are driving the sound for you? I'll often ask, how does that feel for you? Or who are you trying to sound like right now? Because it just opens up this self-awareness to the student, right? And again, this is not something that that takes one or two lessons. Like this is an ongoing process in the one-on-one lesson situation, right? So one of my students, I'm going to call her Jennifer to protect her privacy, came to me after years of classical training. She had a stunning voice. Like I honestly was like, why are you here? You're perfect. I would say her technique was working really well for her, but she'd lost her spark. So everything that she's saying, it sounded really polished, but also kind of disconnected. So over time, we started listening to and exploring music that she actually loved, which turned out for her was like indie pop, indie folk. So I encouraged her to just like let go of that perfect tone that, is often so needed. Well, it's necessary in classical singing, and I understand that. They're right, like stylistically speaking, it does need to be clean. So she started to just slowly let go of that and be able to just tell her story. And her voice and her artistry just sounded so much more expressive and so much more raw. Like it sounded like herself. And I remember the moment that it clicked. It was during a lesson with me. She just finished singing a song and she said to me, that felt like me. And for me, like that's the biggest transformation is when the student goes, "Oh, I wasn't trying to sound like Phoebe Bridgers. That sounded like me." Sure, I'm inspired by somebody like Phoebe Bridgers, so to speak, but it's not sounding exactly like her, right? When it feels like you, when it feels like you've come home to something, right? So when a student finds that space where like the technique and the artistry are married to one another, or they work hand in hand, the result is just something that it just makes you feel alive.
Yes. And a lot of that really resonates with me because, especially in grad school, my teacher is like, she was like the technical queen.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like by the time I got my master's degree, it was like I knew how to sing.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last few years, I really, like, I love my technique. Yeah, like what you were saying before, love technique. And I feel like it helps you express the things that you want to express.
Exactly.
But I think for me, it got to a point where I was fixated too much on the technique. And what I love, especially pivoting to non classical styles, attending workshops by like Jeannie Levetri and attending
Yeah.
her workshops and things like that, and discovering, wow, there's all of these styles of music that I thought I couldn't sing. I thought, I can only sing classical. Who am I to try and sing pop musical theater? Even though honestly, I loved those styles more so before I got into like really my classical training. And so, like, the last couple of years, I've really been working to kind of find and define like what is my sound,
Yep.
and it's so interesting you were saying about the like raspy sound. I feel like so many of my students will be like, how can I get that rasp? So it's like really, really cool, how like these things that, you know, um, that were maybe outside of what was acceptable in classical music, which it's like, I think all of that's kind of crazy if I'm being honest, like not to throw shade, but I think it is. It's like, anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But I just think it's so cool how like you've sort of turned it around and explored all these different ways, and you're helping your students do that too, which I think is so cool. Um, Though I do know, like from your content, that I mean, you're like TikTok queen, Instagram queen.
You were too
Uh,
kind.
and I feel like a lot of what I feel like you talk about a lot on social media is mixing. And, we were
Hmm.
just talking about stepping outside of classical music, working in these other genres. And, you work with singers across these different genres from pop to Broadway.
Hmm.
When you're teaching students to mix, how do you define that? Because I think sometimes, I mean, you even probably even see this from like other teachers on social media, or like even in, oh my God, the professional voice teachers group on Facebook, which is like dumpster
It's
fire central at times.
my gosh, it's
So
so so.
how would you define mix?
That's a great question. Oh, this is such a hot take. Okay. So, my immediate, I do talk about mix a lot on the socials. And I don't know, I think because in my own voice, when I started studying with Dr. Shannon Coates in 2018, 2017, because I really wanted to hone my contemporary skills after only taking lessons that are classical based. And we were working on mixed belting, and it was a brand new term to me. And I think I must have cried in every single freaking lesson with her because the sounds I was making were they were so much more free. And I always thought belting had to be like difficult, and it was this elusive thing that I just thought I'll never be able to do. Like basically I'll get to a G4 or an A4, and then and then it will switch into head voice. I didn't think that I could carry it up. So that's the definition of mix to me. Hot take. I don't think that it's a magical part of the voice that needs to be found. We speak in various aspects of mixed voice all freaking day. Okay? I'm doing it right now. It's natural. So I know how hot that terminology is though right now. My
No,
God.
I think like you're really touching upon something important, and that's something that I really try to work on with my own students. Is like, look, we make these sounds sometimes when we're speaking to each other, and I feel like it's not like you said this big mystical magical thing. Like, and especially too when I'm working with like something I've been really using lately, especially with my tenors and basses, is like mixing, kind of feeling similar to the voice you'd use if you were talking to children, where
Yes.
it's like,
Oh my
or
gosh,
like
nailed
story
it.
time with the kids. like, um, but
Yes.
yeah, sorry, I had to jump in because I was just like,
Oh.
yes, yes, yes to everything you're
Oh,
saying.
exactly, because it's such a hot take, and I get it's really hot in the socials right now, and I totally get what the term itself is going for. And because the voice teacher industry is not not regulated, everybody has their own definition, and so yes, of course, I get why it can be confusing. So for me, it's a resonance style. So on a functional level, it's about negotiating between the thicker vocal cord tissue, so the thyroid or the TA muscle, and the thinner edge vibration, so the CT muscle, that are involved at any given pitch. So it's not just those two muscles that are involved. It's not like, well, mix is just like a negotiation between head voice and chest voice. No, there there's so much more. It's I can see how people think that, like, oh, you're just mixing chest resonance and head resonance together. Not quite. You also have to consider the larynx, the breath pressure, resonance shape. They all adapt dynamically to keep the tone feeling balanced and connected across the registers. So instead of it being this single thing that you find, mix is more like it's like an ongoing conversation between your breath, your vocal folds, and your resonance spaces. You know how we have the, like in classical singing, we call it the passaggio. Maybe in non-classical styles, we'd refer to it as a break or a bridge. So mix to me is like the art of balancing the voice's weights, so to speak. So the listeners hear one voice, not like a break between registers. But again, the break between registers can be used as a really cool stylistic tool, a la Chapel Roan. Sarah McLachlan does it a lot as well. It's a blend of sounds. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And
I get really excited about this.
yes, yes, and all of those things. And like sometimes I will, when I'm working with students, sometimes I will simplify it to be like,
Yes.
we're sort
Yes.
of finding that happy place where we're blending elements of head and chest voice together and also working with some other things, just to kind of keep
Totally.
it like pretty general. Because I think sometimes with students, like,
Yes.
sometimes I gotta simplify it, and I
Me
get
too.
it. Like,
Me too. Yep. I feel like sometimes, listen, students will come to me and say, but I feel like you are navigating, like you are dealing with both chest voice and head voice and you're just mixing them together. And I'm like, listen, if that works for you, let's use that. If the terms
yeah.
50%, no, maybe not 50%, maybe 70% head voice, 30% chest voice makes sense to you, let's use that. I know for me, when I was starting out, that really worked for me,
Yeah.
but it doesn't work for everybody. And that, I think, in my opinion, for teaching, like that's where really honing your diagnostic skills and listening skills for teaching is so helpful, because not every student is the same. They're all going to they're all going to have their own perception or own definition over their bodies, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think it's so interesting because I think also like with mixing, it can be a spectrum too,
Oh,
especially
totally.
like
Yes.
especially when we're thinking about sort of moving through the passaggio or the vocal break. It's maybe gonna feel a little bit more chesty on the bottom end and a little bit
Yep.
lighter on the top end. It's like it's just like another element that you get to play with in your singing, which I think is really fun.
Yes, there was
Um,
a reel I did where I demonstrated that. I was like, okay, I'm going to sing three examples.
yeah.
Tell me which one is mixed. And like, spoiler alert, they all three were mixed. Like, sorry, you're right. It's not just one sound.
And I think that for me, I said to myself, I'm not gonna throw shade on classical singing, and I'm not. Okay, I respect classical singing
Oh
and classical
yeah.
music. But that's what I love so much about non-classical singing too, is that you can play with sort of these different kinds of sounds,
Yep.
in ways that you can't always do when it comes to classical singing, because with classical singing, there's often like a desired aesthetic or a desired sound that
Yep.
you can't always access.
Absolutely.
Um, Now you were just mentioning belting, and I feel like
Mhm.
there's a misconception that belting is risky or bad for your voice.
Mhm.
And if I'm being honest, like I was kind of thinking somewhat around those lines like years ago, back when I was like a classical singer. How do you help singers learn to belt safely and sustainably, especially those coming from maybe more classical or choir based backgrounds?
I'm laughing because I have a very similar story. When I was teaching, I would say from like 2013 to like 2017, RIP to all the students I taught in that time frame where I was like, belting is so bad for your voice. You need to be singing in chest voice past an A4. So I relate to that so hardcore. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. If you were taught by me between those years, like my teaching ideology was so different. And like, thank God for science, thank God that it changes, thank God for growth. But I definitely
No, literally, there's a very well known school that is in my state that is like very well known for CCM styles. And I had a friend that went there for a classical, like basically he was playing an instrument. He was an instrumentalist, but he said
cool.
that they would always call some of the singers there like the screamers or something like that because they were belting. And it's like, and again, like not to name names or anything like that, but it's so crazy how like that's how a lot of classical singers or classical musicians like view some of that. And I just feel
Yeah.
like my experience and learning from, workshops and things like that over the years, I'm like, actually, this is not quite right.
1000%. And listen, I didn't learn any of this in my undergrad. The majority, I'm going to say 95% of my, I guess, vocal pedagogy has really stemmed from post grad work with different workshops and things like that, that have really opened my eyes. I'm sorry, but my undergrad degree did not prepare me for anything other than classical styles, which, to be honest, is also valid because I did go to school for a classical degree, right? So I did take in my fourth year a vocal ped class, but it was geared again towards classical singing. So yeah, belting is not inherently dangerous, and that is like a soapbox that I'm going to stand on until the end of time. So when singers are coming from a classical background though, or like even choir, like a choral background, they're often just taught that, okay, the best kind of sound is round, a lowered larynx, resonance with lots of space. Belting just requires a different acoustic and muscle balance, right? So generally speaking, again, this isn't like a Bible, this is just, it could be in some situations. Generally speaking, higher laryngeal positioning, more speech-like resonance, right? Usually higher subglottal pressure, so like the breath underneath the vocal cords, not more air. One of the best ways that I can describe it is that when I'm belting, it feels powerful and buoyant. It doesn't feel like I'm screaming. And I know when I first was exploring belting, it definitely felt like I was just shouting. There is a difference, right? So when I teach belting to a singer, we strip away the idea that it's about pushing or yelling. It's so much more closely related to like primal sounds. So for example, I have two young kids, and if they run down the driveway onto the road and there's a car coming, I'm likely going to, yell and go, what are you doing? Right? In a really, we're going to call it unhealthy or pushy kind of tone because I'm panicking, right? But if I see like my friend across the street, and I haven't seen her in a while, I'm going to go, hey girl, that is more closely related to belting than the other one. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
we start typically by finding like a healthy, energized speaking coordination. So kind of like how I'm talking to you right now. I don't know why I'm being extra loud. And then we scaffold it, right? So like we start by going, hey, and then they would repeat it back. And we do a couple of those. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll find a pitch. So, hey, and then fall off. Hey, hey, hey. And then from there, find a landing pitch. And I learned this from my evidence-based voice training with Maddie Tarbox, which also completely changed the way that I teach the voice. So then we scaffold it, right? Hey, hey, hey. The whole goal of maintaining that coordination, right?
Yes.
Which for every person, it is different. Sometimes it takes a long time depending on the singer's background. I do find that if they are classically trained and they have spent a long time exploring that, it will take longer. That's not, again, not a rule, but it's just something that I have noticed in my own teaching. And there are some singers who are brand new to singing and they come for one lesson and I'm like, you're already belting. How are you doing that? And it sounds so good. And you have been doing this for one lesson. I don't understand. Right? So we'll explore lots of sensations. So I'll ask questions like, where are you feeling the sound vibrate? And where do you feel that in your body, in your face, in your throat? And how does the breath feel? And what happens if we lighten or brighten the vowel? And what if we change the shape of the vocal tract, right? So I also don't ask these questions all at one time. Like, it's kind of as we're
Right.
exploring, because that is, yeah, a sure way to overwhelm the student. So, but oftentimes it does start off really heavy because some folks will equate it, with shouting. So, shout belt is absolutely a thing. It usually means that chest voice is just more pushed, it's higher intensity, and it's usually reserved for those like big dramatic moments. Um, and it's not bad, so to speak, but you want to use that sparingly, the shout belt, because it can get fatiguing if you're constantly using it. So for me, like the term mixing belting, they're interchangeable, right? So singers will often then say too, like, wow, I just belted that. And like it felt way lighter than I expected. And I'm like, yep, that's because it should.
Yes, and with belting and working in the style, and even like really just so, especially like in my own experience working with singers that are maybe coming from more classical backgrounds,
Hmm?
um, I find that sometimes the chest voice is underdeveloped. Like they're taking their head voice down into chest voice. And I'll be honest, like that was what I was taught too. Like I remember being in one lesson with a teacher, and I used my chest voice, and she was like, she's like, why did you do that? Don't ever do that again. It's like just the desired aesthetics in classical music now. It's like very much take your head voice down, and it just, you can't even hear that over an orchestra. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been finding too. And I feel like a lot of times with these singers, when we're exploring both chest voice or even like exploring some of these more primal belty sounds, they're like, well, it doesn't feel like I'm singing. Like it feels like more connected to speech more
Yeah.
than anything
Yeah.
else, which I'm
Yep. And
like, that's
some of them
it.
get confused because they're like, oh, well, it should feel more effortful,
Yep.
right? And it's like, nope. 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 Nope.
Right? Yes. Now, pivoting to more of like performance topics, audition topics, I feel like some singers struggle to command the room in
Mm.
auditions and performances, where they can just kind of like walk in and feel like, I'm here, I'm ready to take up space, I'm ready to use these belting skills to give y'all, the performance of your life.
Mhm.
Now, what do you think actually makes someone stand out? Because I know that you judge competitions, things
Mhm.
like that. Your students, you put on recitals and things like that for your students. What do you think actually makes someone stand out beyond just having a great voice?
I love this question. I feel like you can have flawless technique, maybe the best technique in the world, but if the audience doesn't feel something, the performance is not going to land. So, in my experience, the singers who command the room tend to have three things all in common. The first one is they know exactly what they're saying. They know what they're singing about. Every lyric, every phrase has emotional ownership and a story behind it, whether or not it's from personal experience or not, right? Or they could be pulling or embodying a character or situation, because some of them are just young and they don't have the life experience for what they're singing about, right? And that's okay. Number two, they trust their instrument. This is probably the hardest one. They're not they're not performing to prove how their voice works. They're using it to communicate. And like I said, this is a deep rooted issue. This is not something like, oh, okay, in 1 month of lessons, that sounds absolutely diabolical. I'm going to trust my voice. This is foundational work, right? Like an ongoing process that involves lots of exploration and lots of getting it wrong and maybe tears and making mistakes. There's a reason why I have a box of Kleenex in my studio, and it's not for folks to blow their noses, right? Like there's a lot, like it can be really, really vulnerable. And number three, they leave the room energetically. So they've got like this kind of confident air of, I belong here. I'm meant to be here. Like you just know looking at them before they sing, like, you're gonna witness something and listen to something really special. right? Adele is probably like my favorite example of that because Adele does not have, in my opinion, the perfect technique. She is an absolutely phenomenal singer. And every time she sings, every time she opens her mouth, I personally am so moved by the sounds that she makes, right?
Yes.
And I think that that is so much more important than having like the absolute best technique in the world.
Yeah, no, and I'm in total agreement with you. And like, I feel like sometimes you can even hear in recordings, like aside from live performances, you can often hear in live or not, you can often hear in recorded
Hmm.
recordings how much a singer trusts their voice and how emotionally invested they are in what they're singing about. And I gotta be honest, Breanne. Okay, I
What?
know that you are a huge Swiftie.
I am a
Okay.
huge Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift.
I will say the album that came out, The Life of a Showgirl, the other week. I mean, I feel like everybody on the internet has like given their take, and I'm like kind of over it. But
Totally.
and like if I'm being honest, like it was not my favorite Taylor Swift album.
I agree.
I think there were some catchy moments, like some
Taylor.
catch, like musically catchy.
Mhm.
There were a lot of lyrics though that I was like, kind of, like, what? Like, I was
We
a little bit
backtracked
like,
from Tortured Poets. She
yeah.
backtracked. Go for it.
But it was like that was also this was also another complaint I had was like it didn't like even though she's singing about being happy,
Mhm.
I wasn't fully buying that from her, if that makes sense, like
Yeah.
vocally.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
so
and like
valid.
everybody has their own interpretation, but at least for me, that wasn't something that I was feeling and listening to the recordings. And so I think that kind of like goes back to what we were just, like to loop this back to what we were just talking about, where it's
Yeah.
like even in recordings, you can hear when a singer is fully invested in what they're singing about.
Yes, I would agree with that take. Somebody that I could say that is maybe a good example of that is someone like Maren Morris, who I love, or Kelsey Ballerini. I feel like Kelsey
Oh yeah.
Ballerini's latest album, which came out a year ago, oh, I can't remember the name of it now, of course, but she sings with such authenticity after have gone through like a divorce and
Yeah.
finding love again, even though her and Chase Stokes split up, and that just devastated me. Right? Like I felt like in Tortured Poets, for example, you could really hear Taylor Swift's pain. Like,
Yeah.
wow, she was definitely in pain there. And for me, I don't know what it is. Like I would rather listen to somebody's pain over their happiness. Isn't that terrible? Like, and I'm a pretty like happy
No,
girl.
no,
Like,
no, because it's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, but even like stuff like 1989. 1989 is
oh,
fun to listen to, and she's happy in
yeah,
that. It's like,
yeah, that's valid.
so, but I
Yeah,
get what you're saying. I was listening to, I'm not like super heavy on country, but I was listening to Megan Maroney's album that came out last year because like a lot of my students are very much into it. And I was like, let me take a listen. And I feel like you can very much hear her sadness and pain at times on that album.
yeah,
Very interesting. But so I love what you were saying about these things that kind of make someone really stand out in a performance, an audition, whether, again, they're like performing live or singing, even on this recording, what we're talking about right now. Um, Speaking of performing and other performance topics, every performer has that moment when something goes wrong on stage or in an audition.
Mhm.
How do you teach singers to recover gracefully and maybe even use those moments to their advantage? So we're kind of talking about, okay, like, okay, over here you have somebody that's commanding the room, but what do you do when you're not commanding the room, when things are kind of falling apart?
Oof. Yep. 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 Okay. So first thing is that we need to remind folks that it's inevitable. Okay. If you're gonna perform, you're gonna audition, you're gonna mess it up. 1,000. You're gonna have moments that are cringy, that you look back or that you make a mistake. It's inevitable. So I think it's important to reframe it as an opportunity to demonstrate something called resilience. Right? It's not a failure. You're not a bad singer if you've made a mistake in a performance or an audition. Remember, it's inevitable. It's an invitation for you to stay in the story. So if you forget a lyric, which that is everybody's like with the singers that I teach, that's their biggest fear. Like, I'm gonna mess up a lyric. Like, oh, okay, right, that's okay. The best example that I can give is last summer. I had two teachers. There was three of us, and we sang the Shrek duet. Not the duet, the Shrek trio. I know it's today. So I think we had young Fiona, teenage Fiona, and like older Fiona. And of course, I'm the older Fiona. And we decided we were going to memorize. And as a mom whose brain power, is kind of spread all over, that was a lot to ask of me, I think, to memorize music. Girl, I messed up that whole last bit. I said a word that didn't even make sense. I don't remember what it was, but both my teachers are beside me and I'm just singing random stuff and they're laughing and I'm laughing. And I was just like, you know what? This is so great for my students to see that like I'm also human and like I can make a mistake. So even if you forget a lyric, continue to make eye contact with your audience, breathe, stay in character. If your voice cracks, keep singing with that intention. Those like literal recoveries in a performance makes it compelling still, right? Because it shows that, oh my gosh, you're a human being. It shows honesty. And that's why I'm the honest voice girl. So it's also important to get to know your own symptoms of performance anxiety before you start, because they are going to be unique to you. So some students, they like their bodies tighten up, right? Like their shoulders get really tense, that maybe their necks get really tense. Some feel nauseous, some get sweaty palms, some, their breathing tends to come really fast. Shaky knees. I'm a shaky knee girl, and that's so frustrating when you wear heels. Oh, I wear long gowns in classical singing, which I was so thankful for, because my knees would just like shake for the first 5-10 minutes, and then I'd eventually like get over it. But explain that your symptoms to your student, like this is me talking as a teacher. Your symptoms are going to be yours, not someone else's. And so the next time that you are nervous, you aren't going to be stuck with a completely different set of symptoms. Those symptoms are going to reappear, right? Over and over. And the more that you can identify what those symptoms are, that's going to give you some power, because then they're going to feel familiar, the less control, right? They're going to have over you, because then the comfort of the familiar starts to conquer that fear. You're like, oh yeah, this is the thing that happens to me when my body is telling me that I'm ready, right? Like I'm performance ready. So reframing that performance anxiety into performance energy.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I just feel like when I see someone mess up on stage, I'm never like, ooh, they messed up. I am embarrassed for them. I'm thinking like, oh, look how they recovered. Like, yeah, you go, look, you're a human being. What a concept. What a
Right?
concept. I get excited a little bit, to be honest.
Yes, and I think that resilience, like you said at the beginning, it's just
Yeah.
such an important skill to have as a singer, especially if you want to like do it for a long time and do it often. Not every performance is going to be super, super perfect.
Not even at all.
Yeah, exactly. So love all of that.
Yeah.
Well, Breanne, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
I am. I've had 2 coffees. I'm ready.
Okay, well, I think that maybe answers my first rapid fire, which is coffee or tea.
Definitely a coffee.
Me too.
I do love a coffee. I will say though, if I have more than two, my brain goes too fast, and so decaf is it. Decaf is the way in the afternoon. I do love a tea in the afternoon and in the evening though.
Nice. And how do you like your coffee?
Ooh, I am a bougie coffee person, and I am okay with that. I'm an espresso girly. So I pour myself an espresso. I do 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla with like a 1/4 cup of steamed milk. And preferably like the Fairlife, so we're like getting the protein in
Oh,
there.
yum.
I do love an iced latte. I also just love a regular coffee with a little bit of cream and a little bit of sugar. Like
Oh,
I do
yeah.
not discriminate. I love every kind of coffee. Tea, I'm a decaf Earl Grey girly.
Oh,
Love it.
yum. You sound like
Mhm.
a coffee connoisseur over there.
Well, listen, I used to work at Starbucks, so I'm
Yes,
like,
that's right.
I
Duh.
love it so much.
Well, my next question is, and I might know the answer to this one. What is your favorite reality TV show?
Oh my gosh. The only thing that I watch is reality TV, okay? It's the only thing. Other than like The Handmaid's Tale or like deep, like dark TV, I feel. It's those two, okay? I got my husband into it too. Right now we are in the middle of Love is Blind.
Yep.
We haven't caught up fully yet because we just finished season 7 of Love Island. We were a little bit behind on that, but I love anytime Netflix puts out a reality show, I'm just like, give it to me. Give it to me now.
Yes, we are all over Love is Blind this
Oh,
season.
so good.
But we're also not quite caught up. We are like, we just started episode 6, so it's
Yes,
like,
same with us. Yeah. What?
oh boy. Okay, I'll have to message you about that.
What?
What is a song you're working on right now in your own singing?
That's a great question. So I've been getting back into songwriting again after a
Oh.
long hiatus. My kids are really young, and so I'm running a business and I'm a music director at a church. And so I don't have obviously a ton of time, but being able to create is really important to me. So I've recently written 2 songs, and I am working just on kind of solidifying those melodies so that they feel really good and really solid. I think I might go in and record an EP in 2026.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I haven't actually said that out loud to
I was like,
everybody.
wow, that's crazy.
But like here I am, just it's the coffee. I'm telling
Here
you.
it is, everybody. I love it though. That's amazing and really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of other songs, not your own, what is a song that's been on repeat on like Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you use?
So I love Maren Morris's new album, Dreamsicle. I love that she's moved into like the more poppy range realm of things. Because like I'm not a huge country person, but I do love Maren Morris. I love Kelsey Ballerini, and I love Casey Musgraves. Like those 3, who they're kind of country, but like not super. So I would say there's 3 songs that I've been just looping from Maren, which are "Push Me Over," "Dreamsicle," and "Because of Course." It's a beautiful album.
Nice.
Um,
What is a book you recommend that everyone read?
Nonfiction or fiction?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Ooh, I'm
matter.
a reader too. Okay, so nonfiction, Big Magic. If you're creative, that's
Yes.
such a good one by
Elizabeth Gilbert
Elizabeth
wrote
Gilbert.
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yep, that one. And then I'm reading a book right now that I think is magical, and it's probably gonna be one of my top 5 of the year, called The Unmaking of June Farrow. It's such a beautiful story. And if you're a creative who is consuming social media, and you're just tired of it, get lost in a good story.
Yes.
Lost in a good
Yes.
story. It really helps to get the creative juices flowing. And this is one that I get excited to read. I want to know more about the story. It's a little bit like, I would say it's similar to like The Time Traveler's Wife, in that it's definitely fiction, but there's like a little fantasy element to it, and that just kind of gets my brain out of its own box, you know?
Nice. That is good. Who is the writer? I think I saw that somewhere,
Oh, I
but
don't remember. Isn't that terrible? I don't remember. I can tell you
no, it's
exactly what
okay.
the cover of the book looks like.
No, you're good. You're good. But that's The Unmaking of June Farrow, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I feel like that's a very unique title. Be able to
Hmm.
Google it.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh. Oh, when I was in university, my dad would send me what was called his wows, and it was dad's words of wisdom, and he'd send me one a week to kind of marinate on. And one of them, I think my favorite was, it's not about what you do or who you know, it's about what you do with who you know. And that is in regards to networking. And
Yeah.
that just, it always stuck with me, because there's so many talented people in this world, but it really is like how you're networking and how you're showing up and how you're showing up for other people as well in this industry.
Yes. Man, your dad sounded like a really cool guy.
He was a cool dude.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Breanne, thank you for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast today.
So much for having me. This was so fun.
It was so fun. Yay. Okay, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Breanne. I really did have a blast talking to Breanne in this conversation. It was so fun chatting with her. She is such a down to earth, fun, uplifting, upbeat person. And I just had the greatest time talking with her about mixing, belting, and I hope that you learned something from this conversation today. Um, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, I love it if you could give a 5-star rating and review. And if you want more singing content, be sure to follow me on the socials. I've also linked Breanne's socials in the show description so you can check out more of her work. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.